One October evening, in the early 1990s, a 16-year-old boy stepped outside to bring the horses in for the night. But when he did, he would come face to face with something truly terrifying that would torment his family for weeks and haunt their nightmares for years to come. Welcome back to Legends May Live, where we explore the strange, the mysterious, and the downright eerie. I'm Drew, and today we're exploring a case that shook one family of ranchers to their very core. It's late fall on the family ranch deep in Navajo country. It's isolated and surrounded by desert landscapes. A man who we'll call William is living with his wife, 11-year-old daughter, and his teenage son that we'll call James. He had heard of all the mystical and supernatural tales of Navajo country, but he wasn't really concerned. He knew how often people's expectations influenced what they experienced. He thought, if you're looking for supernatural, you can find it in anything. His wife felt the same. And besides that, he had grown up in Navajo country and never experienced anything other than the common challenges of working on a ranch. But lately the animals seemed off. It was hard to say what it was. They didn't seem sick. Often with animals that are in heat, a term for the time when females are ready to mate, they release a hormone that makes the males more competitive and sometimes aggressive, but that wasn't it either. The animals seemed nervous in the day and outright scared at night. Normally, the only threats that the livestock would ever face were the occasional coyote pack, but the two guard dogs would easily scare them away with their massive size, and if they ever did have to fight, it was over very quickly. Still, the animals' skittishness had everyone on guard for whatever predator was out there, whether it be a large pack of coyotes that for some reason are making the dogs nervous, or maybe a mountain lion, or possibly even some of the few remaining gray wolves. Even the two large Anatolian shepherds, who were normally fiercely protective, would just sit and whimper at night. They wouldn't even venture off the porch, in spite of being trained to protect the livestock, which, up until this point, they had been great at doing just that. Either way, this was a farm, and the livestock's safety was extremely important. It was the family's source of income, and also they just had this sense of duty toward the animals themselves, as farmers often do. One evening, the family's horses were acting startled, and they were making a lot of noise. They sounded like there was something scaring them, and with the guard dogs falling down on the job, James, the 16-year-old, went outside to bring the horses into the barn and lock them up for the night, where they would be safe. So he grabs his jacket and heads out the door. It was a full moon, so it's pretty bright out, and he didn't bring a flashlight. As he starts walking, he gets about halfway from the house to the horses, and all this time he's glancing around, seeing if he could find what had them so riled up in the first place, and he's not seeing anything at first, and he wonders if maybe they saw a snake, or maybe even a stick that they thought was a snake. But then he pans over to the fence line, just a few yards past the horses, and what he saw almost stopped his heart. Standing there was this grotesque skeleton, human-like thing. It was hunched over, and its body was deformed, just twisted and contorted mess, and its arms and legs were just so thin and wiry, and its arms just seemed way too long to fit with the rest of its body. And as if all that wasn't bad enough, his head may have been the most frightening part. It looked eerily like the head of a coyote, but the truly sickening part was that James could see this thing's grayish, leathery skin looked like it was just draped over its thin limbs. Some parts seemed too tight, but others seemed so loose, like they were decaying and almost dripping off. Now, as soon as James could bring himself to move, he turned and sprinted back to the house and slammed and locked the door behind him. His heart was pounding as he looks back through the window, and it's just standing right outside the house, staring toward the home. James is terrified. He screams for his parents, and they rush in to see what's the matter. James tries to tell them what he had seen out there, but before he's done, there's a tapping at the window. William rushes to get his rifle, but by the time he gets back, the tapping has stopped. He looks out the window, but whatever it was gone. Still, to be sure, he stepped on the porch to look around, when he sees that on the wooden window frame, there are these big, deep claw marks. Now, at this point, William and his wife know something was out there, but they're not thinking, supernatural. They're thinking, okay, James has a level head, but it's dark, it's kind of spooky out there. What he must have saw was a bear with the mange. I mean, they're not unheard of in this area. The parents try to calm everyone down, and though everyone was shaken, the rest of the night was pretty quiet. The next several nights, though, the family would hear low whispers outside. And they would listen closely, but they didn't make out the words. It sounded like another language. And then there were also these heavy footsteps that they could hear going around and around the house periodically. No one wanted to go outside at night, and it was getting to where the animals would avoid certain areas even in the daylight. And these strange sounds continued to terrify the family until it all came to a head one night. As the family's relaxing from their hard day of work, there's this sudden thud from over their heads. It startles them all, and they listen intently. At first it's just silence, but after a few seconds they hear it. Heavy, deliberate, slow steps on the roof. At this point, William had had enough, and now he knew where this thing was. He grabs his flashlight and rifle and goes outside as quickly and quietly as he can. When he opens the front door, he can see the two dogs sitting, and they're just absolutely terrified. One's lying down whimpering, and the other is sitting motionless, baring its teeth with its ears pinned back, but still not making a sound. So William listens for footsteps as he eases out into the front yard. But at first, the steps had stopped. Then he turns on his flashlight and points it at the roof. He's immediately shocked because this thing's just crouching on the roof, gripping the edges of the roofline like it was waiting to pounce. This was no bear. It was just like James had described, but now it's in the full flashlight. So William's able to see that this thing has these odd patches of fur hanging to its skin, and the skin looks more like bruised or even rotting flesh than gray. As the light's shining on it, it locks eyes with William. Then it slowly opens its mouth, what seemed to be impossibly wide, and lets out this just blood-curdling, distorted screech before leaping off the roof. After this, the disturbances didn't stop immediately, but they did change. Now the family heard distant howls and the occasional scratching at the wall, but the creature never again came face to face with the family. It was as if now it knew that they were willing to fight back. After several weeks, the strange sounds and scratching finally stopped altogether, but it would be years before the family ever felt comfortable on their own ranch again. That's it for today's episode of Legends May Live. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and send it to a friend who loves an eerie tale. Until next time, keep your eyes open and keep a lookout, because it turns out legends may live.